Hello, class. My name is Elizabeth Lucas, and this is my interview reflection video for Capstone in Psychology with Professor Key. Since starting my degree in psychology, I have been interested in entering the field of counseling, but I'm not entirely certain which specialty I would like to focus on. I've been between child and adolescent counseling and addiction counseling for quite some time. Since addiction counseling is something I'm becoming increasingly interested in pursuing, I interviewed Dawn Meelan, who is a substance use disorder professional. Dawn has 2 undergraduate degrees, one in English and another in Child, Youth, and Family Studies. She also recently completed her graduate degree, so she has a Master of Science in Addiction Counseling. Dawn is a counselor at a drug and alcohol detox center. This facility is where individuals can go to safely detox from a substance, but it is not a long-term rehabilitation center. This center mostly manages the physical symptoms of withdrawal, but also offers some basic counseling and resources. Dawn focuses a lot on intake interviews and figuring out what a patient's next steps will be. During this steps, she spends a lot of time getting to know the client. Beyond their basic information and medical history, she also gathers information on their substance abuse history. So she'll find out things like what their substance of choice is, how long they've used for, how often they use, and the last time they've used, things like that. Dawn will also gather information on their family background, such as what their family dynamics are, who are their support system, and what their living environment is like. She describes this as being some of the most important information to obtain from the client because family and support can often make or break recovery. Family can be a help or a hindrance. Depending on which it is for the client, Dawn may want to include family therapy on the list of services she recommends upon discharge. Additionally, if the client is likely to return to a home environment where drugs or alcohol will continue to be present, she can assist in finding the clients a sober living house or another long-term facility to return to. She'll also conduct mental health screenings and establish with the patient what their goal is for the long-term recovery. She describes having a short time with the patient because detox is about a 5 to 10 day process. While the client goes through detox, Dawn will create a list of resources individualized to the patient, including finding them an addiction counselor, further medical treatment if it's needed, NA meetings in the town that they live in. She can also include other resources like family therapists or housing needs or psychiatric care. If the client is interested in attending inpatient rehabilitation programs, she can find a couple of different options for them and head start the paperwork for them as well. Dawn describes the most fulfilling part about being in the industry as having a knowledge of helping someone who was at their lowest, who didn't believe they could get back up and keep going, succeed. She said it is rewarding to be able to be a resource for someone who needs it and to watch them be successful in their recovery journey. But she also describes finding it challenging to meet people where they are at times. She said it's easy to help people who want to change their lives, but it's not as easy when that person isn't ready for full change. She describes it as being emotionally challenging to know what is possible for some clients, but them not see or want the possibility for themselves. For continued education, Dawn is pretty new to the field, so she hasn't had to do much so far. Her place of employment will sometimes set that up, but she is required to complete 60 hours of continuing education every 3 years in order to keep her license active. She recommended professional conferences or online training courses that her more seasoned coworkers have participated in, all of which are easily accessible for professionals to attend and complete. Dawn's biggest recommendation for students pursuing work in the field is to put yourself out there. She said that she initially started out at the company as an unpaid intern, but she moved through multiple positions and has now become a counselor. She said that anything is a learning experience and learning opportunity, and it's important to try everything out until you find what you really like. Working in the field of addiction was not something she thought she would be doing if she hadn't gone for that internship. A couple of things stuck with me through this assignment. First, it was Dawn's comment about how family can be a help or a hindrance to recovery. I think that coming from a world where I grew up in church and my parents have been married for going on 40 years, and there's no addiction that I'm aware of in my family. And quite honestly, it isn't something that I was exposed to growing up or even now very much in my adult life. So this statement was hard for me to relate to at first. In my mind, family is the first thing that you turn to for help. But the reality for many is that their family is who introduced them to substances to begin with, or their family is dysfunctional and they experienced abuse and trauma in their lives that turned them to using substances, or maybe even continuing a relationship with their family and staying sober at the same time is not a possibility. So, what do they do after detox or rehab? What can seem so simple to me is stop using substances and everything will be better in your life. But the reality for them is stop using substances and I lose everybody in my life. So it can be a huge dilemma. Another statement that stuck with me in this assignment was how Dawn described it as being emotionally challenging when she knows what's possible for some of the clients, but they don't see it or want it for themselves. I think this can be a universal experience amongst caregivers, as caregivers tend to be really empathetic individuals. So for me, this was a reminder to build and maintain professional boundaries with my clients in order to protect both myself and the client. It's important for the client to know that they're responsible for their own choices, and also remind myself that I can't make the decisions for the clients. I really enjoyed speaking with Dawn and getting her insight into the field of addiction.